Hello there. How come we don't hear about this on the likes of the BBC and the rest of the lefty EU-loving press? Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and then like and comment below. So, things are getting tasty in the European Union as the cost of living crisis begins to really bite. And at the forefront of these rather spicy protests are the French. They've been at it for days, if not weeks. Not that you'd hear about it on mainstream news, though. And now I see that Spain has joined in, with the UK government being forced to add a warning to their travel advice on Spain. Demonstrations, political gatherings or marches may take place in Spain with little or no warning, particularly in cities. You should follow the advice of police and local authorities. While the vast majority of demonstrations are peaceful, there is a risk of isolated incidents of unrest or violence. If you're in and around areas where demonstrations are taking place, remain vigilant and move away quickly if there are signs of disorder. Now, the government must always be diplomatic when talking about our friends and partners in the EU. So I take this as diplomatic speak for it's all kicking off. And it has a similar warning for travelling to France. But it also says that France may have a shortage of petrol and diesel due to strikes. And there's also a lot of similar unrest in Germany and Belgium, with recent reports of company and partnership bankruptcies ramping up by 34% year on year in Germany. It all sounds like there's some fun going on over there in the EU, doesn't it? But the Ramona press won't be telling you about it anytime soon. However, it's different in the UK. It's the ordinary worker that's getting hacked off with the protesters.
Hold it, stay here. Go. Over the tube station, we need to send the police right now. Right now. Someone from that.
That people can wander around causing trouble with no repercussions to speak of tells us lots about the UK authorities. And the Met Police Assistant Commissioner Matt Twist has just advised the public not to directly intervene. Well, I do have to ask, if the police aren't going to intervene in any meaningful way, then how long are motorists meant to wait with their cars for? Probably for longer than any jail time these eco-loons will get. It is becoming blatantly clear that the establishment is more than happy to facilitate the likes of Just Stop Oil. No wonder those self-entitled protesters are so happily flouting the law and damaging people's lives. Anyway, just 20-odd miles away across the Channel in France over the last couple of weeks, there are reports of mass strikes and protests over many weeks, causing acute fuel shortages and travel disruption. Even nuclear power plant maintenance was affected. The French people are not happy with their President Macron. And the German broadcaster Deutsche Welle, or DW, has been asking if this is the start of a new left-wing movement to stop things like Macron's pension reforms, to take the pension age from 62 to 65. And Unheard.com reports on talk of a new May 1968 or another 1930s-style Popular Front rebellion, especially in the light of the French Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne being forced to use emergency powers to ram her budget through. With some protesters in Paris marching for a €15 an hour minimum wage, a 32-hour week, and retirement to be lowered from 62 to 60. Something that doesn't sound economically viable to me. But all our homegrown EU-loving Remoaners see is sweetness and light in the EU. All the workers must be happy under EU regulations according to them. The EU is suffering in exactly the same way as we are, but for Remoaners, somehow in the UK it's different. But there is a second angle to this. As well as being pro-EU, most of the UK media is also rabidly biased towards the left wing and makes a very poor attempt at hiding it. So it must shield its readers, listeners and viewers from any news that might indicate other countries are having it as bad or worse than us, despite not having a Tory government. The UK press therefore has a dual interest in not keeping us abreast of events in the EU and the rest of Europe, other than Ukraine, of course. And they are pursuing those twin interests with gusto, much to the delight of both the left-wing opposition parties and the Remoaner rejoin the EU mob. So if you're on social media, please do spread these stories of EU discontent that the European press are covering, but where ours have imposed a media blackout. But how about this? Someone else isn't happy about the EU. Would you credit it? That staunchly anti-Brexit boss of Ryanair, Michael O'Leary, is upset that his Republic of Ireland-based business might be hit by a rising corporation tax, and that he might personally get stung with increased income tax if a Sinn Féin government were to come about there. And he called Sinn Féin economically illiterate and said that, being a proud Irishman, he would take his company out of Ireland if they started mucking about with corporation tax. The trouble is that this is a worldwide Biden-led US initiative to prevent tax avoidance, and the EU and the Republic of Ireland have signed up to it. So it would be interesting to see where he takes his company in 2 years' time, when Sinn Féin is expected to win and get into power in the Republic of Ireland, along with its left-wing wealth tax agenda. But he probably won't relocate to the UK, because Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt rather like high corporation taxes too. Ours are going up to an eye-wateringly uncompetitive 25%, and that's actually a 24% increase in one tax, the cost of which will have to be passed on to consumers, so increasing inflation. Now, I have been warning about this one on and off for a while, that those super smug electric car drivers will soon find themselves taxed as revenue from petrol and diesel cars dries up. And lo and behold, the Telegraph is reporting exactly that. Yes, the government is mulling over plans to extend vehicle excise duty to electric cars from the 2025 to 2026 financial year, less than 3 years away. And the report says that Whitehall sources were telling them that taxing electric vehicles was inevitable. Well, it always has been inevitable, because the tax was never really put in place on petrol and diesel cars to change people's behaviour. That was just an excuse. They need to tax something, and cars were a good target because of congestion and pollution. And electric cars still cause congestion, if there are enough of them, that is. And the batteries are full of lots of stuff that have to be mined. And being heavier than petrol and diesel cars, they wear out tyres faster, so emitting more particulates into the atmosphere. Good excuses for lots of lovely taxes. But in the same paper, now that Jacob Rees-Mogg has been relieved of cabinet joint responsibility, he's asking if the country can be ready to ban new petrol and diesel cars by 2030. With just 7 years to go, it might be a bit late for that discussion now. But there is also rumour flying about that once Jeremy Hunt rises to his feet to deliver his autumn statement on November the 17th to inform the nation about all the belt tightening that will have to be done and the taxes that need to be raised, that the Tories will be toasted. Therefore, as we approach 2030, we'll have a Labour Party government in charge, a Labour government that is manically committed to net zero and will bankrupt us to get there. Oh, and it seems that those much-awaited, 5 years, ferries for the island of Arran that are being built in Scotland's nationalised shipyard will not be as green as advertised by the SNP. After all the hype about them being able to run on liquefied natural gas or LNG, a design flaw means they will only be able to run on diesel until the problems are ironed out, and then the ferries will have to be taken out of service to be converted. But why LNG? I thought the SNP were against natural gas. I mean, they're not going to frack for it, are they? Surely any green ferry should have sails or even oars. And finally, when subscribing, please don't forget to press that little bell and also select the all option, or you won't get any notifications when I publish a new video. And thank you all so much for taking the time to watch the show.